Hello and welcome to another tutorial on preventing your ship from tipping or flipping. If your ship wants to turn into a rocket and go to space, this is the video for you. Now I'll go over several different tips to prevent this from happening. Some beginner steps like lowering the center of mass, looking at force vectors, ensuring they're going through the center of mass, to more intermediate steps using active PID systems, hydrofoils, and propellers. But one of the first things you need to know about stability is how do I just make my ship statically stable just with the center of mass. It's the easiest way and the best way for beginners to try to control that. And first of all, what is the center of mass? If you go into build mode, you'll see a blue dot. It's a three-dimensional dot in the middle, near the middle of your ship. And what that is if you were to balance your ship on your finger, that would be the point where it wouldn't tip any direction. It would be perfectly balanced in all directions. So one of the best ways is to use the pendulum effect, which is to have a lower center of mass and have more buoyancy at the top and more heavy components at the bottom of your ship. And one of the ways players can do this is by building a keel. So that's what I'm going to do first, and we'll go in and see what happens if I just run my ship as it is and give it full throttle. You'll notice that it's trying to turn into a rocket. So the center of mass is too high, it's too far back, and what we can do is just build a simple heavy keel on the bottom, and they have lead beams that can do a perfect job at this. So I'm going to go ahead and build a lead keel underneath our ship. And what that should do is lower this center of mass down. So now when I run full throttle, we don't have that issue anymore. So with a low center of mass, having heavier parts at the bottom and lighter parts at the top of our ship, we can make sure that our ship tries its best to stay upright. And this will work, without any active systems. So if we're not moving, or if we lose components of our craft, it will still maintain that stability passively using the pendulum effect. Here we are back at the original ship with the stability issues and no keel. Another thing we can look at is the force vectors of your thrust and your rudders. A force vector is not as complicated as it sounds. It's just the vector that goes straight out from your propeller through your ship. And if that vector doesn't line up with the center of mass, if it goes below or above, it will end up creating a torque. And that torque will cause a pitch up or pitch down of your ship. So in this case, our force vector coming from our propellers goes underneath the center of mass. That's causing our ship to go up into space when we give it full throttle. And it will cause the opposite when we try to reverse the ship. It'll try to pitch down. So what we want to do is actually raise these propellers up so that they go closer to the center of mass with that force vector. Now when we give it full throttle, assuming they do go into the water all the way, which they might not, we'll end up with a force vector that does not create that torque that tries to pull up on our ship. Now I know this isn't always possible with your ship, so we'll go over a lot more ways to counteract the torque that they create when you put them below the center of mass. But this is one way you can help prevent it, just by raising your propellers up a little bit higher on the back of your ship. And another thing you'll notice is we're still going to have the issue with our rudders. Same thing goes with any other sort of force on your ship. If it's not lined up with the center of mass, you'll end up with a torque. And in this case, these rudders are creating a torque that is, let me pull this up out of the water. They're creating a torque that is pushing this way, so to the side of the ship, that's not lined up with the center of mass. That's what's causing your yaw control, and that's a good thing. But it's also underneath the center of mass, so that's also causing a roll torque. So we can try to bring these up closer to the center of mass, and as long as they're in the water, we should be able to have no issues with our roll as we try to yaw. So here I am putting full yaw into the rudder, and we're not seeing any roll at all because that force vector isn't causing a torque. Even if I was to add more of these, you'll see that it's not causing the roll issues that we were seeing before. So that's one more way to prevent your ship from tipping or flipping. So here we are again at the original ship with the stability issues we've had from the beginning. If we can't move the center of mass down and we can't move the thrust vectors of our propellers and rudders up, then the next best thing is to look at an active stability system. And one of those things is a hydrofoil. Hydrofoils only work when they're in the water, and they only work when the ship is moving. I'm going to go ahead and place 4 of them on the back on each side and 4 of them on the front. And what I'm going to do is go over several different ways of using hydrofoils to stabilize your ship. There's ways that I'll go over that aren't recommended and ways that I do recommend. The first way is very simple. A lot of new players will do this and just put them all to 45-degree angle up. And that does work. It works because as soon as a hydrofoil leaves the water, it loses all its control authority. And when it loses its control authority, that side of the ship ends up crashing back down to the water. The other side, with the hydrofoils still in the water, will maintain that control authority and try to keep each side of its own ship up out of the water. So I'm going to go ahead and show how this works. If I give full thrust with our hydrofoils, they're all set to maintaining a positive 45-degree angle. You can see the back hydrofoils are trying to prevent the back end from going down into the water, while the front hydrofoils are doing the same to the front, but as soon as they leave the water, they've lost all control authority and it comes crashing back down. Now, this isn't the most effective way, it isn't the most efficient way, but it does work, and I don't recommend it, but I did want to show this because I know a lot of players like to use this method. You can see as I turn left or right, I also have the roll control taken care of. Like I said, as soon as one side comes out of the water, it's going to come crashing right back down to it. Okay, so I've gone through and I've reset all the hydrofoils. I'm going to go over a better method. This is a method where the hydrofoils will respond to user inputs and they'll try to counter the tendencies you're seeing of roll or pitch, depending on if you're giving a yaw movement with the rudder or a thrust with the propellers. So if you go into the hydrofoil settings, you'll see here's this yaw setting where I can control the response of the hydrofoil with my yaw command. So if I give a full yaw to the right, this is saying I'm going to give a negative response, meaning I'm going to try to pull it down into the water. So I want that on the left side because I have this tendency to roll to the right when my ship is given the command to yaw right. And so this should do the opposite, and I'm going to do the opposite on the starboard side. When I give it a yaw to the right, it's going to give a positive response, meaning try to pull it up out of the water. So I'm going to go ahead and test this and I'll give it half throttle and try to turn it to the right. And we see, okay, we've got a response that is doing the opposite. We're actually over-countering or overcompensating our tendencies to roll. In order to fix that, we can change the settings, or we can just remove some of the hydrofoils so we get less force countering that tendency. So here I am giving a right turn, and it's much better now. We end up with much less of of a roll tendency. In fact, it's a tendency in the opposite direction. But I still have the issue with thrusts and giving a tendency to nose up. So what I want to do is go in and have it respond to my thrust. And if I give a positive thrust, what do I want the front hydrofoils to do? I want them to pull down into the water. So I'm going to give a negative response on my thrust command here, and the opposite in the back. I'm going to do this on both sides. So again, back is going to have a positive response, and the front's going to have a negative response. So when I'm giving thrust, they're going to want to go down. So set to -45, so a downwards pull when the main thrust is positive. So here I go. I'm gonna place this back into the water. I'm gonna give it full thrust, which should cause the nose to stay in the water. So now our hydrofoils are responding by going nose down, and our back hydrofoils are responding with a pull, pulling the back up. And then if I try to turn, they're still controlling my tendency to roll. And so my ship now has a much better response to my inputs with stability. So I've gone through and I've reset all the hydrofoils again, and I've placed them back to the way they were before. Now I'm going to show you what I consider to be the best and the way every player should be using hydrofoils to control the stability of their ship. And that's to have the hydrofoils control the rotation of your ship in the way that the AI is expecting them to. If the AI is giving a pitch command, it should be controlling the ship to pitch it in the way that it's asking. Same with the roll. The way that these hydrofoils are set on this ship, there is actually no control authority in the yaw direction. So when I give a yaw command, or the AI gives a yaw command, there should be no response from the hydrofoils. So we'll set each of the hydrofoils on each side of the ship to respond to the way we would expect them to. If I want a pitch up command, the hydrofoils in the front of the ship should go up, pulling the ship up. If I want a roll right command, the hydrofoils on the port side, the left side, should be pulling the left side of the ship up. When I go to the back and I'm asking for a pitch up command, they should be going down, pulling the back of the ship down. Asking for a roll right command, again, the left side of the ship, the port side, should be pulling up out of the water. And here on the starboard side, in the back, we're going to do a pitch up command, should go down, and a roll right command should pull the right side or the starboard side of the ship down. In the front, I'm asking for a pitch up, it should go up, a roll right, it should go down. Now when I have the mainframe controlling my pitch and roll, it should be trying to maintain a 0 angle pitch or roll on its own when I use the ship or tank maneuver setting. So I'm going to go ahead and place it in the water. I'll give it a direction, and as you can see now, the AI is controlling our hydrofoils to control the roll and the pitch and trying to maintain that 0 angle. Now it's not going to be it's going to be bouncing around a lot because it's constantly overcompensating because there isn't a PID controller yet. Now adding a PID controller to this is really simple, and there's a couple of different PIDs you can use. It depends on the type of control that you're going to be doing on your ship. Most of the time you're going to want to use the control general purpose PID. But if you use the AI PID that's built into the AI section, you can connect it to the AI block and ask it to control those axes and keep them steady on its own. But it doesn't work when you're controlling the ship. So the AI PIDs will only work when the mainframe is controlling the ship. And as you can see right now, it is doing that, but it's bouncing around quite a bit because the hydrofoils are hitting their min and max control back and forth constantly because our settings in our PIDs are oversaturating it. You look at our roll commands and it's constantly hitting the top and bottom restrictions of our movement of our hydrofoils. So we can change that very easily by just reducing the gain. We go down to 0.01 and now we can see, okay, so we're not maxing out our hydrofoil angles when we don't need to. If I go back, you'll see, okay, so it's a little bit more stable. It's keeping it flat, but I can do the same thing now for its pitch. Let's keep the pitch at 0.1 and then give the yaw a, let's say, a 0.01 and see how that works. So now it's actually much more stable, and the AI is controlling the ship now, trying to prevent it from flipping up and tipping over. And if I ask it to rotate, it's doing everything it can to prevent the ship from tipping over. Now you can change the settings, you can add more PIDs, but if I control the gain settings, I can get some better responses from it. If I add or remove hydrofoils, I can get better response from it. It all depends on your specific ship. Now, one of the things that I was talking about with the AI PIDs is if you're going to give a user input, it does not respond anymore to the stability settings that you've given it. So if I give a right turn, you can see all of the hydrofoils just turned off. I give it full thrust and try to turn manually using the vehicle controller. We have no more control because the mainframe was taken over by user controls. So now what I want to do is I want to go to a general purpose PID, and I'm going to take off the two roll and pitch PIDs from the mainframe, and I'm going to allow it to continue using yaw since I don't really need to control that. When I let go of yaw, it's just going to stay straight. But if I go into the control section and general purpose PID, I can place these anywhere on the ship, one for each axis, so pitch and roll, and go in and say, all right, when the ship's asking for a pitch response, let's ask for a propulsion pitch control. And the reason why we're doing propulsion pitch control and not hydrofoil angle control is because it's sending a messages to all the devices listening to the pitch axis, and we've set our hydrofoils to listen to the pitch axis. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that these settings are the same and go to the next one, set the roll, go to roll setting, go to propulsion roll, and put the settings to the way we had them. Let's go 0.02 and see how this responds. So now the PID controllers are controlling pitch and roll at all times. And if the mainframe's controlling it, or if I'm controlling it, it's trying to maintain zero angle in those axes. So here I'm going to go ahead and take control. I'm giving full throttle. I'm going to turn right. You can see the PID controller is maintaining a perfectly steady zero roll angle. I'm going to go ahead and turn right, and there it is, working perfectly. So there's how to use hydrofoils. And again, just to control, if you're getting it to oversaturation or if it's constantly bouncing back and forth, there's settings, and we'll go over more of those in another tutorial. Okay, so now we're going to talk about using propellers to control the stability of your ship. And the nice thing about them is, unlike hydrofoils, your ship doesn't have to be in movement in order for them to work. You can actually just have your ship sitting still, and the propellers will keep it stable by pushing up and down under the water. So now I'm going to use the same settings I've had with the PIDs on the hydrofoils, but instead use propellers. So I'll just place a couple of propellers on each corner of our ship. 2 in the front on each side. Let's do 3. And 3 on the back on each side. And so we want these to respond, again, in the way that we would expect them to, with a pitch up. And they should automatically have that setting. If I want the roll command to also work, I'm going to have, with a roll right request, I'm going to have these also do a push on the port side. Again, back here, a right roll response, they're going to be positive. and on this side a right roll response should be negative. So I placed this into the water, and you can see now that our responses from our propulsion is keeping the roll and the pitch steady, just like the hydrofoils. But now if I'm requesting manual control and stop the ship, it will still keep it steady. And if I give it a right request to roll to turn right, the yaw commands will bring it to the right, but the pitch and the roll will remain at 0, just like the PID settings are requesting from the propellers underneath. So this is one of the best ways, in a lot of ways, a lot of shipbuilders use to keep their ship from going out of control, rocketing to the moon, or rolling one side to the other when their turrets are shooting. It's an excellent way to do it. You can see it's quite stable. If I go out in world view, you can see how stable and beautiful the ship is now moving through the water. And that's the tutorial for stability, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you on the next one.